Morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody this morning. Oh, and I'm looking outside. It's really stunning outside. Turns out it's going to be stunning inside as well. Today is the white tea session, and the white tea's name is Stunning. It is in the classification grade. You would think of it as a silver needle. Now, this brings to mind right away, and perhaps brings to your mind right away, the following question. Aren't all silver needles created equal? This is a very reasonable and thoughtful question. And the answer would be no. They're not all created equal. So what guides the creation of silver needle? Oh, now that's a really deep question. Maybe I better not quite ask that question, especially since I'm not wearing linen. If I were wearing linen this morning, then that would be a safe question to ask, because then you get the real answer. Let's step back and ask the question, why are there so many silver needles on the market? And what's the difference between them? So the original silver needle, remembering that that's a grade/classification title, really only refers to one thing, and that is the pick. This is a white tea, and it's the bud, and sometimes the bud with an unopened leaf at the base. That's silver needle. Always has been. In the Chinese literature, it's been actually referenced many times. A long time ago, as a matter of fact, back in the Tang Dynasty was referenced. Now, this seems, for those of you who've been following, to create a contradiction, doesn't it? Referenced in the Tang Dynasty. Oh, that means there was white tea in the Tang Dynasty. The answer is no. And the reason that's not correct is because white tea actually implies a processing methodology. Silver needle is more about a classification picking methodology. Has nothing to do with processing. It's really what part of the tea plant that you're picking. So the silver needle that was referenced during the Tang Dynasty was a particular varietal from the Fuding area, and it was that pick, but it was processed as a green tea. Very simple. Remembering that green tea is unoxidized, white tea is lightly oxidized. That's the basic end result definition and difference between the two. So let's keep focusing in on silver needle. So is silver needle, if it's a picking methodology, maybe you could have silver needle done in other countries? Because if it's just a picking methodology, heck, here in Montclair, we could grow a tea plant, just pick that needle, that topmost bud, and call it silver needle, couldn't we? We could do that. Would you drink it? Answer is probably not. And certainly you wouldn't pay premium prices for that. So let's go down a little bit more and pull back the covers and see what else is implied by silver needle. When it was used in the Tang Dynasty, when this term was used during the imperial dynasties, it referred to area, and so that would be northern Fujian province. It also referred to what was being picked, in other words, that single bud, and most importantly, it referred to a specific varietal. So there are two specific varietals that this has come to refer to. One is Fuding, Da Bai Cha. The other is Zhenghe Da Bai Cha. So Da Bai Cha really just simply means big leafed white is what that refers to. Has this varietal migrated from this area to other areas of China, to other areas of the world? Yes, it has. And so it goes in many disguises, because in some places, because especially the Zhenghe varietal grows so quickly, they grow it in green tea regions in other parts of China and harvest and process it as green tea, not as white tea. The processing of silver needle sounds like it should be easy. Well, I've made it a little bit more complicated because you have to have the right varietals. But let's pause it for a moment. You have the right varietals. Now this should be easy, right? You plant it in the ground, you give it the right fertilizer, you make sure that it rains 60 to 70 inches, you make sure that the average temperature is around 61, 62 degrees. Bingo, springtime. You pick that bud and you have silver needle. Those were a lot of ifs, just in case you weren't paying attention. So soil composition in northern Fujian province has certain characteristics. And if you don't replicate those characteristics, you certainly are going to end up with an end result that both from a taste perspective and from a nutritive or a nutritional perspective are going to be different. It's really simple. It's really just that simple. In addition, I quickly glossed over some of the physicality of the terroir, specifically the weather. It's got to average about 61, 62 degrees. If you want the best stuff, and we'll talk about what that is defined as in a minute, it's got to be slightly warmer, 65 degrees on average. And instead of 50 inches, you're going to have closer to 70 to 80 inches of rain. Last couple of weeks, we've been talking about aged white tea. This is not aged. This is new tea. This is current tea. And this, nobody can agree on. There's different theories. Let me put it this way. There's different theories, and there's the possibility that silver needle originated in at least one of three places. One of those places being Fuding, which is what the place we're going to talk about today, because that's where stunning comes from. One of the places being Zhenghe. We've talked about Zhenghe white tea silver needle before. And one of the places being Jianyang. Jianyang we've never talked before because the evidence for Jianyang being a starting or originating place for silver needle is thinner than the evidence for both Zhenghe and Fuding. Those two places have pretty good competing claims. We seem to have some pretty good historical material for Fuding starting in around 1796. So that's pretty early. Not for actually producing white tea, but for doing something with the buds that was a little different there. We're not quite clear what it was. And we have real good evidence that very close to Fuding, there's a mountain right on the coast called Taimushan, and that's about 3,000 feet above sea level. And there's anecdotal stories, there's all sorts of mythologic stories about how the goddess of mercy went down to this island into a cave and took pity on a poor peasant and gifted this varietal Fuding Dabai Cha varietal, which in 1796, somewhere between 1796 and 1885, was then brought to Fuding and planted extensively in that area. So there's not a lot of distance between this alleged cave and Fuding. It's about 20 to 25 miles. It's close. It's real close. So for those of you who got up late this morning, and I promised that I wouldn't do this, and of course I've ended up doing it again, so that's not a surprise. I sent a map, and this is a map of Fujian. So why don't you get that out? Because let's look and see where we are today. Fuding is in the northern part. This is a map of Fujian province. It's in the northern part towards the east coast. That is right on the ocean. F-U-D-I-N-G, Fuding. Taimushan is very close. It's right on the coast. Fuding is close. And in fact, when you're in Fuding, you look out from the mountains and you see the ocean. It's beautiful. Has that real temperate feel to it. Very, very beautiful. So this is where we are today, and this is the area where many scholars believe that white tea arose, and that this varietal arose, and that the process of making white tea arose. Now, all the scholars, a group of scholars who still believe Zhenghe. Oh, and by the way, where is Zhenghe? You have the map there. If you'll move directly to the west, almost in a straight line, you'll see something spelled Z-H-E-N-G-H-E. That's Zhenghe. And if you move slightly north, you'll see a place called Jianyang, J-I-A-N-Y-A-N-G. So these are the three places, and again, we're in Fuding today. So I'm not going to mention Zhenghe and Jianyang anymore, but I want you to get that picture of where they are. And you see, really, if you just kept going west, you'd end up in the Wuyi Mountains. So you're in a key tea growing area. There are other places in this area that there are plenty of interesting teas being grown, but that's not why we're here today. We're here because of stunning today. Characteristics of Fuding versus other white teas, especially silver needles, would be that the buds are fatter. The Zhenghe, and I just told you I wasn't going to say Zhenghe again, and here I am. But again, very predictable. The Zhenghe buds are a little over an inch, maybe an inch and an eighth or an inch and a seventh. The Fuding tend to be slightly shorter, still an inch, but fatter. Both areas' buds have a certain whiteness to them. That is color white to them. And that's because of the trichomes that are on the buds. The Fuding buds tend to have more, they seem to have a greater intensity of those trichomes, but you can definitely see them on the Zhenghe buds as well. And remembering that these trichomes occur naturally. This isn't Monsanto who went in there secretly at night and planted all these little hairs on the bud in order to prevent the bugs from eating the bud. This is Mother Nature herself designing a methodology that when insects bite on those hairs, they spit it out and they go elsewhere. Because to the insects, they don't taste good. So this is a defense mechanism. So one of you, I can already feel the question forming in your minds. Does this mean that you can plant Fuding da by it. And you don't have to worry the whole year. You can just keep picking because it's got these trichomes and the insects reject this on sight. And the answer would be no. So here's the rhythm of Fuding. It's usually only picked in the spring, either 5 or 6 or 7 days before cleaning the grapes festival, which is usually April 4th, April 5th, or 5 to 6 days after. So there's that window, because that's when the weather is just right, the bud is its fattest, and you pick. What actually are you picking? You're picking 6 months of accumulated energy, because they don't pick after the spring. They do some pruning, but there's 6 months of just grow. Let's put some energy. Let's make some anti-inflammatories. Hey, let's get some catechins in there. Let's get some polyphenols. Eventually humans will find us. Let's make this stuff really, really rich. And by the way, while we're at it, why don't we put a little L-theanine in there? Because then whoever drinks us is gonna feel calm physically and be brought to mental clarity. So when it's picked, there's 2 methodologies. If you're going to grade, pick for the grade of silver needle, you have one of 2 choices. You either wait until that bud is as fat as you think it can be, and then you go through and pick bud only. Very labor intensive, takes about 12 to 15,000 hand motions to get a pound. Very slow. Well, if I'm picking very slow. When you're an expert, I wouldn't say very slow, I just say slow. Now, what's the other methodology? The other methodology is some farmers wait until you have a bud and a small first and second leaf coming up. Sometimes they let that leaf get a little bigger. They pick right at that intersection. So bud and 2 leaves. Gosh, I have a hard time making that hand motion, but you catch where I'm going. And then they bring it into the production area, and then somebody else separates the bud from the 2 leaves. Sometimes they use that whole bud and 2 leaves, but that's not a silver needle classification. That becomes a white peony classification. And remember, I'm using the word classification. Chinese scholars would hate that I'm doing that. And I'm not talking about scholars in China. I'm talking about American Chinese scholars, because they would be saying, wait a minute, that's Dengji. That means great. Well, yes, I know technically how to translate that word. However, that's not what it means. It really means classification. And that's how white tea is picked, by classification, not by, this is not a quality, because some people like a heavier taste, some people like a lighter taste. Silver needle, in later years, because of the scientific research, it became known, oh my gosh, this is jam-packed with nutrients, which are useful for the skin, useful for inside of a human body. Wow. So from that standpoint, one could argue, well, isn't that quality? Yeah, it's quality. It's quality, but that's not why that word was used. It was really used as classification. So you have those 2 methodologies, picking methodologies. In Stunning's case, it was picked direct. In other words, there weren't any other leaves, just picked bud only. Beautiful fat buds. By the way, when you go to one of these processing facilities, unlike a red tea processing facility, red tea processing facility from 5 miles away, you get out of the car, you're in the middle of nowhere, Do you need a map? The answer is no. Your nose will take you right to where it's being produced. The white tea factories, they're subtle. You can't be 5 miles away. You have to be about a half a mile. You get that half a mile away, and then all of a sudden, oh, God, that smells good. And you try and get your arms around, well, what is that smell? It's a lot of different things. White tea, particularly silver needle, has many, many ways of expressing itself in terms of aroma and in terms of flavor. Now, you all are extremely polite, but I can feel the thought of thirst now that we've talked of flavor and aroma getting to the front of your brain. So it is with great pleasure that I ask the tea master, Biju, to come forward and to demonstrate how to brew this tea. And then after she demonstrates, to brew with you. So without further ado, Biju.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
My name is Biju, B-I-J-O-U. I can spell it. Sometimes I'm wrong. I speak French. Biju, people accuse you. I say, no, that's not my name. Let's see. Okay, we do Bai Cha. It's a white tea. And then I really miss my, the Fuding factory, in Tailao. Okay, this is the 2 cup, over, the 标准 standard. So easy cup. And then, yes, thank you. The tea, so
this is her tableau, and this is what some of which you should replicate. 2 cups, a strainer. The tea toy is optional. Tea toys are optional, but the 2 cups and the strainer are not optional. All right, and so she's bringing over the tea leaves.
tea leaves. Oh,
Tea buds, yes. And yes, this is done at 170. And it's pre-measured already 4 grams. And one of the things to realize about silver needle, remember, it's 5 leaves all in this one bud. And this, by the way, is what the farmer gives up. And that's why, by the way, it's also expensive, because the farmer's picking this, and instead of getting the weight and the glory of 5 or 4 additional leaves, you get this bud. But what a bud. So you use any temperature between boiling and 170 to heat the cups. Make sure that your cups and every utensil that you're going to use is absolutely clean. There's no residue from any previous brewings or from any washing. And there's just the tea rhythm, being present. This is really what's special about making these type of teas. You get yourself focused on the details, and as you get focused on the details, you suddenly realize, oh yeah, I got to be present to do this. I can't just walk through this and appreciate everything. All right, Tea Master is going to draw the 175-degree water that we have here. Then she's going to dissipate the steam, aerate the water, and bring the temperature down to 170 or less. Remember, for this type of tea, 170 or less has an advantage for all of us. And that advantage is that the flavor brightens. If you cover, use higher heat, the flavor flattens. And in a minute, when you taste this, ask yourself, do I like a bright flavor or do I like a flattened flavor?
we need a little bit low temperature, so after the, the flavors and also smooth, okay? Either one, you can use the 175, but it's tart. The really, the flavors look like spices.
So actually, what she's saying is if you use higher temperatures than what we recommend, the tea comes out harsh and not as smooth as if you aerate and dissipate the steam down to these temperatures. You get a better tasting right here, better tasting tea. All right, so she's aerated the water. She's taking the tea leaves. These are pre-measured to be 4 grams, puts it in the heated cup, and watch how she shakes. She turns the cup horizontal and then shakes that way. And that gives you the greatest area in which to heat up the leaves. She's going to put the aerated water back in the kettle because it's got a nice spout. She can control the pour. And she's going to pour on the side of the cup. And this is a 2-minute steep. I'll put the timer on. So all these details, when added together, give you your best flavor. Does that mean that if you miss any detail or you make a mistake with a detail that you're not going to get a good flavor? Oh, you're going to get a good flavor. It's not going to be the best flavor. This is always fun to watch because you see the leaves all on top. And again, the thing to note about these is how big, and I don't mean long, but how fat these are. And you notice that it's very white. And when you actually have the tea liquid, you're going to see the trichomes or the hairs floating in. Now, gosh, and I'm going to violate this rule again. I just shouldn't say rules because then it just gives my brain an opportunity. Well, when can I get you to violate that one again? I said I wasn't going to mention Jungho before, but here I am back in Jungho. Why? Because there's 2 styles of processing silver needle. One is called the northern style. That's what you're having today. This is the Fuding style. One is called the southern style. That's the Jungho style. Now, looking at the map, you're probably scratching your head. Why isn't that called the western style? That seems like the western style to me. You know what? We have no authority to do that. And for whatever reason, it got named that way. And that's just how it is. So for the northern style, for this, it's pick, you air dry or sun dry, I should say, until you get it down to about 20% moisture left in the tea buds. And then they bake slowly over about anywhere from 100 to 122 degrees. That's how this style is made. I'll tell you in a minute what the southern style looks like in terms of how it's made, of course. Timer went off. You separate the tea liquid from the tea leaves. And several things. First off, wow, not very much color in there. Wonder if this is going to taste any good. No color. I'm used to color in my tea. We'll see in a minute. Let's look at these leaves. More importantly, let's smell these leaves. Oh, wow, there's stuff in here. Okay, we're going to enter the tea arena. This is 170 degrees, so we can take a bigger sip. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a sip of this. Oh, and I see all those trichomes. I'm feeling really good because I happen to know from my science class that trichomes are where so many polyphenols are. So I love when it's clouds of trichomes. I just feel really healthy. 170 degrees sip. Roll it around the tongue. Okay. I'm trying to ascertain where the astringency is. I'm picking it up. Thinking about aftertaste here. I'm still not ready to make a judgment about that. I'm thinking about energetics. I'm not ready to make a judgment about that. I'm gonna take a second inhalation. No, it's not an inhalation, this is an actual sip.
I have a little feedback from a participant. Dry leaves smell sweet and forest.
I'll comment on that in a second. Second sip, I verify where the astringency is. Ah, I have an aftertaste identification now. And I concur with this commentator who said that the dry leaves smell floral or
Sweet and forest.
sweet and foresty. And I appreciate that comment. I appreciate it a lot, particularly the foresty part, because that's a really hard smell to get a good description around. And I think your description fits those dry leaves perfectly. All right, it's your turn to brew. So the tea master will go ahead and brew with you. I'm still working on the energetics. You have your 2 cups out. 175 degree, and you're gonna aerate it.
And cool it down to 170, right?
Yes. And cool it down to 170. So when you're heating this cup, you can use any temperature between 170 and 212. Because really what you're trying to do is get rid of residue, make sure there's no soap stains on there, make sure the cup is absolutely clean. So that isn't as important as when you actually start to steep the tea. All right, drawing your 170-degree water.
A question about brewing implements. When do you use or not use clay pots? Is it oxidized versus not oxidized teas?
Oh, great question. So when do you use clay pots? You only really need to use them for semi-oxidized teas, and that would be oolongs only. And technically, if you're a lover of oolongs, you should have 2 clay pots, one for the lighter, non-Wei mountain cliff teas, and then one for all the other oolong teas. And there's no need. It's a waste of money, actually, in some degree, to use a clay pot for any other tea, unless, like our friends in certain parts of Fujian province, some of those people have 60, 70 pots. And so they have 1 pot per tea. And you can do that, but the rules would be vastly different for how to brew. And it'd be vastly more difficult to control. So we don't recommend a clay pot except for semi-oxidized teas only. And it mostly in China, that's mostly, unless you're a tea aficionado, that's mostly how they behave as well. Okay, you poured the water in. You notice you didn't pour on the tea leaf. You set your timer for 2 minutes. You remember that after you separate the tea leaves from the tea liquid, you're going to save those tea leaves because you get 2 more great steeps from each of these 4 grams. This is a very, not forgiving, but very long-lasting tea. It's really a wonderful tea. All right, I said there were 2 types of processing methodologies. And of course, there's methodologies in between, some that are mixes, but I told you the northern was sun dry and then bake. The southern is sun dry, bring indoors briefly, but don't bake, and then take out and under hot sun, fully dry. So both methodologies work. They produce different taste results. And so therefore, this is really a preference that you develop over time, that the tea consumer develops over time for which style. Is the northern or the southern purely one recipe? And the answer would be no, because there are variations to each style, that each style's adherence, depending on their experience, will apply. But this gives you generalized information about when somebody says, oh yes, I like a northern style silver needle. And you think, ah, that means Fuding. Or I like a southern style, which means Zhenghe. That's all that means. And it really means that it was processed differently. However, when you think about it, it wasn't processed massively different. One is sun-dried all the way, one uses a combination of sun-dried and baked. And then there are those that do a mix of both styles. Your timer's gone off. You're separating the tea leaves from the tea liquid, because you're going to save those leaves because you're going to get 2 more great cups. You're taking a look at yours. You're seeing the hairs in the liquid. You're going through quality assessment now, trying to figure out astringency, aftertaste, and energetics. Then you'll do it a second time, and you'll focus on aroma and taste and a verification of the energetics, I should say, and astringency. And the very first thing you're going to notice is, golly, this really tastes different than the aged tea. And it's distinctly different from the aged tea. This tea in northern China and in this area where it's grown is seen as having huge value in making the skin smooth, making the skin in good health. Also, it's a very calming tea. So those things are both widely acknowledged in China. Yeah.
Wet leaves smell very floral, says one.
Wet leaves, very floral. There is a strong florality to the wet leaves. And one of the reasons people are always surprised, because if they have low grade, and I'm not talking classification here, I'm actually talking grade, low grade, low quality, let me put it that way, low quality silver needle, it's very flat. You usually don't realize, oh, there can be other things going on. It's as you enter the silver needle market and realize, oh my God, there's differences between this, that you stumble upon this stuff. When we stumbled upon this, we were shocked. We were actually dragged to this farm because we were complaining the whole way. It's like, you know, we've already got silver needle. We've already got tons of white tea. Why are we going? This place is so far away. When are we going to be there? Are we there yet? You know, we did all the bad behavior things. And then as soon as we got to the factory and smelled the difference, oh, this trip might have been worth it. And then when we tasted it, it was like, why was I drinking that other tea? Why did I think that was so good before? Yes.
Other participants say, wow, we get strong floral also from the shaken, not yet wet, but from the shaken leaves as well.
Strong floral from the shaken leaves as well. Not even before they're wet. And it's absolutely there. Yes.
Someone else comment, There's a hint of vanilla aroma and flavor.
I like this comment because somebody is detecting and picking up a hint of vanilla. You may have heard the tea master when she was talking about, well, if you use higher temperatures, brings out a harshness. And then she mentioned something about spicy. And really, she was referring to this. There are these other flavors that are kind of playing in the background, and sometimes they really come strongly to the fore. I know what you mean by vanilla. Good comment.
Somebody else shares, I detect many things in the scent of the tea liquor that I would describe as floral, vanilla, and ocean.
Ah, very good comment. Floral, vanilla, and ocean, all occurring in the scent of the tea. And, you know, why is it I love this comment? I love this comment because if you were in China and you had made that comment, the farmers would have smiled broadly because this is how they sense this tea, particularly by adding that ocean in there. Yes, they sense that ocean in there. Yeah.
Soft texture with a little astringency on the tip of the tongue and the back of the throat.
Soft texture with a little astringency on the tip of the tongue and the back of the throat. And this means that you and I are probably related because my genome is telling me just about the same thing. I have it on the tip of my tongue. I have it at the back of my throat. And actually, as I'm thinking about it, it creeps up a little bit at the back of my mouth as well.
It also is reminding me of the scent of the lotus leaves that wrap lotus leaf rice.
Oh, wow. What a good comment. This commentator is experienced with Chinese food, and they've had rice wrapped in lotus leaves, and there is a certain aroma that the lotus leaf gives off. And it does have, the scent of this does have some connection or some similarity to that aroma. Good catch. Good catch. These are actually great comments. The other thing that you may notice as you're going through this tea is there's a certain easiness of drinking this. This one is almost juicy, and as such, in a way, at least for me, it goes down quite quickly. And therefore, sometimes I rush through drinking this. That's how easy it is for me to drink this. And that's how the flavor combination along with the smoothness affects me. All right, so in terms of, you catch why these teas are expensive, because it's taken a lot of work to produce them. You also catch why this as a class of tea in China is becoming more and more appreciated. In the early years, and what do I mean? In the early 1900s, the European market liked this tea and started to put in more orders. Then World War I occurred, and then the orders stopped. And so after World War I, getting white tea was a little harder. So what Europeans did, who got it and who really liked it, is they put a few leaves into their red tea when they made red tea. And so they actually made a blend because they couldn't get very much of the white tea. But that was very popular among elite tea drinkers on the continent or in Europe. The other thing that I want to talk about is from a sense of calmness. One of the things I think you'll notice is, especially if you start off in the morning with silver needle, any of the silver needles, you do, or at least I get this calmness, this centeredness That's the energetic for me. And the other part of that energetic is I seem to be able to focus better when I am doing this first thing in the morning. And it could be, I don't want to say that wasn't a scientific statement, because I can imagine many reasons why I focus better. One of them being, for example, if you're drinking, say, Dreamscape, this enormous oolong to start off the morning, oh yeah, you're getting plenty of focus. But what are you focusing on? You're not focusing on your work. You're focusing on the tea, because the tea is taking you away. So that's when we talk about this tea, it's frequently referenced that way. Again, it's got a high L-theanine content, so there is actually some science behind why you would feel a little bit more focused in drinking this tea. The white tea in general also has a high degree of catechin. So lots of alleged health benefits with this, lots of benefits around skin health. And I really liked ending up out of these 3 teas that we did during this series with this one, because it takes you to a different place. Enemies demise is very good. And you've got the tones or the notes of honey, you've got that smoothness, you got extreme mellowness. And it is fun and pleasant. And then White Thunder, yeah, you got more mouthfeel, but it's also very, very pleasant. This one kind of takes you on a little bit of a different path, and it's got more upfront strength, so to speak. Yes.
Participant shares, it's both grounding and uplifting. So easy to drink.
Grounding and uplifting. I love this comment because you're really reflecting on all the elements of white tea. High L-theanine, high caffeine. So you're getting both things at the same time, and you're able to detect that. Great comment. Great comment.
Very smooth. Reminds me a bit of yellow tea and even green tea due to its boost.
Ah, okay. So, and I'm really glad. And so this commentator said it's very smooth, especially relative to green tea, yellow tea, and making a slight comparison with green tea because of the boost. So the last 2 comments have been about uplift and have been about boost. White tea has more caffeine than green tea, and silver needle in particular has more caffeine. What's the other element of this? It's not aged. So the aged white teas never strike you with that uplift. Instead, they strike you with, oh, I'm an utter calm. I love this flavor. It's smooth. But nobody in the last 2 weeks used the word uplift. Nobody used the word boost. I immediately, as I was thinking about the energetics, was thinking, gosh, I feel a little bit more awake. And hence that boost, and hence the youth. So let's back up. The reason we did the old aged white tea first, both of those were aged, and then went to a brand new white tea, is to contrast that feel. And you guys have picked it up. You've done a fabulous job of picking it up, because this isn't your imagination. That is there. The other thing, I don't know about any of you, contrary to what you think should be happening, at least for me, I'm perspiring a little bit. I'm getting that boost is putting a little bit of heat into me, which is usually unexpected because white teas from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint are all cooling. And so it's really, really interesting that this one gives you that boost. So that's why when we go and enter the quality arena, I understand what Chinese traditional medicine says, and I've talked to you about that. I understand that, oh, this is the winter season. I'm not really supposed to be drinking all that much white tea. I understand all these things, but I don't allow that to disturb by tea what judgment I'm making. And science is in China is proving me right, because the science about each of the varietals is starting to come out now. And the chemical constituents, the variations in chemical constituents are all over the board. And it's really surprising. Yes.
Another participant shares, I detect a zest of citrus, almost like a mandarin.
Love this. A little citrus zest, almost as if while none of you were looking, I shredded a little bit of mandarin orange in here. Now, the good news is I didn't do it because the tea master would have caught me right away. So you can rest assured that didn't happen. But I catch that sense of a little fruity, a little zesty. Yes.
The flavor expands as I drink it.
I was wondering if anybody was going to give me this comment. Love this comment. The flavor expands as I'm drinking. So what is this about? I have my theories. It's certainly not about temperature, because with oolong teas at 200, you have to wait till it cools down before you can take more in. There's a temperature difference that creates what appears to be a taste difference. In this, it almost feels as if the constituents in the tea itself are causing that expansion of the flavor. I don't really know the answer to that question, but I also detect the same thing. All right. Wonderful session with all of you. Let's see how I'm doing. Oh, not too bad. Good. And we loved doing this to give you a sense of where white tea can go. So again, you had 2 aged white teas during this set of teas in this very modern silver needle, and you got 3 different feelings. Now, what's the next session going to be like? It's a good question. I wonder if I can remember the next session. Oh, turns out I can. We're going to do 3 reds over the next session. Chiffon and efflorescence are 2 of them. And I believe we'll end it up with aromatic lily. So that'll be fun. It'll give you a different taste profile. I got to give you a little shock news too, so that everybody's clear. We will be traveling probably before the end of March.
End of April, or the end of March. Okay, sorry.
We will, yeah, be starting before the end of March. Did I say April?
No, you said March. I think I was shocked when I realized that the end of March is coming really, really soon. That was me. Sorry, everybody.
Okay. Yeah, I'm struggling with this too, because usually we make plans 6 months ahead of time, and this time for a number of important reasons we had to delay. But by next week, I hope to be able to give you the exact dates. What we're going to do in our absence is pre-record and put on YouTube. So you'll have access to the sessions for the teas. For those of you who purchase them, that you'll reference it on YouTube. Any questions you have on those teas, you can write down, and then when we come back, we'll have a hard time communicating with you especially while we're in China. They have the so-called internet wall, and it keeps getting higher and higher. And so trying to clamber over that wall is a challenge. Japan has another type of challenge, and we'll do the best we can, but no guarantees. So that's upcoming. We won't be back until the beginning sometime of May is what we believe. So this is a long trip. We've got a lot that we've got to accomplish during this trip. We're looking forward to it, but we already are missing all of you. So with that in mind, this upcoming week, your responsibilities are quite clear. Stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye now.
Take care.